These are California families who inherited their childhood homes and discovered their property taxes increased by 1,600% overnight. This is the story of Prop 19, the most dramatic change to California's property tax system since Prop 13 passed in 1978. On November 3, 2020, California voters narrowly approved Assembly Constitutional Amendment 11, which became Proposition 19, with just 51% of the vote. Most had no idea they were dismantling protection that had existed for over 3 decades. The ballot language was carefully crafted to emphasize benefits for seniors and wildfire victims, while burying the massive tax increases that would hit grieving families inheriting homes. Over 30 years, California parents could transfer any property to their children without triggering a tax reassessment. A vacation home in Tahoe, a rental property in San Francisco, the family house where you grew up, all of it could pass down with the same low base year value established under Proposition 13. This protection, created by Propositions 58 and 193 in the 1980s and 1990s, also built upon earlier measures like Proposition 60 and 90 from 1986 and 1988, allowing working-class families to build generational wealth. Proposition 19 changed everything. Under the new rules codified in Revenue and Taxation Code Section 63.2, if you inherit a home and don't move into it as your primary residence within 1 year, the property gets reassessed to current market value. Miss that deadline by even a single day to file for the homeowner's exemption, and the protection vanishes forever. No exceptions, no extensions. Let me show you what this looks like in real numbers. Take a modest Los Angeles bungalow built in 1925. Under Proposition 13, it might have a current assessed value of just $35,000, generating annual property taxes of about $624. But that same house is now worth $850,000 on today's market. When it transfers to the next generation under Prop 19 rules, the Los Angeles County Assessor reassesses it at full market value. Those property taxes jump to $10,477 annually, a 16-fold increase that often triggers a supplemental tax assessment, shocking most families into selling. The stories are heartbreaking. Sarah inherited her mother's Pasadena home in March 2024. While dealing with grief and managing the estate, she couldn't decide what to do immediately. By May 2025, 14 months later, she finally moved in and filed for the homeowner's exemption. But she was 4 months too late. The 1-year window had closed. Her mother's $1.8 million home, which had a tax base of just $300,000, was now fully reassessed. Her annual property taxes jumped from about $3,600 to over $19,000. The irony is crushing. Proposition 19 was sold to voters as closing a loophole for the wealthy, but it's devastating working-class communities. Venice, often portrayed as affluent, is actually home to families who bought modest homes in the 1970s and 1980s for under $250,000. Today, those same homes are worth $2 million to $3 million. Consider Ernesto, a retired plumber who purchased his Vernon Street home in 1976 for $64,000. He and his wife Linda live modestly on Social Security, but when their home transfers to their children, those kids will face annual property taxes that could easily exceed their parents' entire Social Security income. The measure had 2 main components, but voters only heard about one of them. The widely promoted benefit allowed homeowners over 55, the severely disabled or wildfire victims, to take their Proposition 13 tax savings with them when they move, up to 3 times anywhere in California. This was the carrot that helped the measure pass. The stick was hidden in complex language about intergenerational transfers. What voters didn't understand was that they were voting to eliminate most inheritance protections. John Kupal, of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, calls it the biggest property tax increase in California history. He points out that grieving families find out about it in a letter from the assessor's office that arrives in the mail along with the sympathy cards. The California Association of Realtors sponsored Proposition 19, expecting to profit from the surge in home sales when families can no longer afford to keep inherited properties. They hired former Taxpayer Association employees to create deliberately deceptive advertisements. Susan Shelley from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association describes it bluntly. This is a billion-dollar tax increase on California families. The text actively tries to hide it. It's really very deceptive and poll-tested. Even the legislative process was controversial. The constitutional amendment missed the regular deadline for the November 2020 ballot, forcing the legislature to call a special election that was consolidated with the general election. The original author, Phil Ting, actually abstained from voting on his own measure. Now, nearly 4 years later, we can see the real impact. From July 2022 to June 2023, only 56% of Proposition 19 applications were approved statewide. That means nearly half of families trying to preserve their tax savings are being denied, often due to technical paperwork issues or missing the strict deadlines. The $1 million exemption that was supposed to protect middle-class families is already proving inadequate. Adjusted for inflation using the California Housing Price Index, it is now $1,044,586 for transfers between February 2025 and February 2027. But in California's housing market, that does not go far. A basic 3-bedroom house in many communities now exceeds that amount before you even consider the existing base year value. Farmers are particularly hard hit. Chris Mathies explains the dilemma. You have such an one-risk tax environment in California. It's very difficult for a farmer to give it to their children because most farms are worth over $1 million now. $1 million is not what it used to be. The repeal efforts have been extraordinary but unsuccessful. The Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association has tried twice to gather enough signatures to put a repeal measure on the ballot. In their first attempt, they collected 402,000 valid signatures. In the second, they reached 560,000, but they needed 874,641 to qualify for the ballot, and despite massive grassroots support, they fell short both times. Community activist Leanna Louie has been collecting signatures and explains the frustration. Proposition 19 had a very deceptive title which misled voters and passed narrowly in 2020, resulting in unaffordable property taxes for many Californians, because it took away the rights of parents and grandparents to transfer tax base to children or grandchildren. The political establishment has blocked legislative solutions. Senator Kelly Sayarto introduced Senate Constitutional Amendment 4 to restore parent-child transfer protections, but Democrats killed it in committee. Assemblymember Mike Gibson also tried to address the issue, but faced the same resistance. Even California's state controller, Malia Cohen, has warned that these changes disproportionately burden Black, working-class, and blue-collar families for whom homeownership is the primary path to building and preserving wealth. The Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is not giving up. They have filed a new initiative called the Save Proposition 13 Act of 2026, aimed at the November 2026 ballot. This measure would address not just Proposition 19, but also close loopholes that have allowed other tax increases to bypass voter protections. But for families facing reassessment right now, 2026 feels like a lifetime away. Every month, more assessment letters arrive in mailboxes across California. Families are forced to make impossible choices, pay taxes that exceed their income, take out massive loans against their homes, or sell properties that have been in their families for generations. The promised revenue from Proposition 19 is flowing to local governments, tens of millions now, projected to grow to hundreds of millions annually. Schools are getting their share too. But this money is coming directly from working families who thought they were voting for wildfire relief and senior protections, not the elimination of inheritance rights their parents had counted on. This is the reality of Proposition 19, a measure sold as helping the vulnerable that instead devastated the very families it claimed to protect. In California, the American dream of passing a family home to the next generation has become a luxury only the wealthy can afford. For everyone else, inheritance has become a crisis that forces impossible choices between family history and financial survival. The question now is whether California voters, armed with the truth about what Proposition 19 really does, will have the chance to fix this mistake before more families lose their generational wealth to a tax increase they never saw coming.